And Donald Trump is now back in the United States. He's trying to sell his immigration policy to the American people. You're taking a live look there at the presidential candidate giving a speech in the state of Arizona. Many see this as Trump's chance to provide some clarification on his immigration policy. I'm joined now from California by Miguel Tinker-Salas. He's a professor at Pomona College, and he is also an authority on the political and social issues confronting Latin America. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. Your biggest takeaway from the Trump and Peña Nieto joint appearance, was it a positive or negative move for either person?
I think that for Peña Nieto, it's a tremendous mistake, and for Donald Trump, it really doesn't clarify anything. It was a lot of political posturing. Both individuals are seeing their presidency and their campaigns failing. Peña Nieto has approval ratings of below 23%. Donald Trump doesn't see a pathway to the presidency. He wants to act presidential without actually having substance behind that acting. And for Peña Nieto, not having challenged Donald Trump publicly was a tremendous mistake that makes him look weak, and that for Mexicans, it is accepting up into their country a person who has insulted them physically, politically, culturally, socially, while attempting to make immigrants into scapegoats. So I think that Peña Nieto is the biggest loser in this process, and it's unfortunate that this visit wasn't really challenged. It was challenged in the streets of Mexico in protest, and it was challenged in the Congress, where most of the political parties opposed it, and in the National Assembly in the city of Mexico City.
Any big surprises, though? You know, this was something that sort of came up at the last minute. A lot of eyes were watching. They're waiting to see what both would say. And you touched on it a moment ago, but really, what was the goal for both sides?
For Peña Nieto, it was to look presidential, to say that he took on Donald Trump, but in fact did not challenge him when he had a public opportunity to challenge him about the role of Mexicans in the U.S., about the border wall, about the slurs against Mexicans. He said nothing. Tweeting it later makes it seem as if he's trying to cover up. And for Donald Trump, he looked weak. He said he was going to go to Mexico, to the Lion's Den, to confront Peña Nieto, to talk about the border wall. Never said about who's paying for it. The reality is there already exists a border wall. The U.S. government has paid for it. There has been almost 2 million Mexicans already deported from the U.S. The U.S.-Mexican border is the most militarized border in the world. Yet this doesn't seem to appear on the radar screen of Mr. Donald Trump. So the reality flies in the face of what Donald Trump is talking about. So again, we have a disconnect between the reality and the political discourse.
As we mentioned right now, as we speak, Donald Trump is having a speech. He's speaking about immigration in the state of Arizona. Do you think it will sway any undecided voters? What are you expecting to come out of this speech?
I think he's going to talk about the fact that he was in Mexico City, that he did raise his concerns in Mexico City, again, wanting to act presidential, and also not necessarily trying to win over Latino voters, where he has support of less than 20%, but trying to win over maybe Republican moderates, educated Republicans and others, by saying that he has compassion, by showing that he's willing to change his policies. More than likely, he's going to repeat what I've said about the fact that a border wall already exists, although he's been operating as if it didn't. He'll talk about deporting criminals, not immigrants. He'll make minor changes and tweak his policy without fundamentally changing the basic message, because he fears losing some of those more conservative voters, xenophobic voters who have been supporting him on the issue of mass deportations and on immigration.
All right, Miguel Tinker-Salas, thank you so much for joining us from California.